Salam sejahtera and good day to everyone. Welcome back to our lecture, still under endocrine system. And the topic or the title of this lecture is Control of Endocrine System. And please make sure you have my lecture notes. Okay, so we move to the next slide. Okay, so control of endocrine system. When we talk about the endocrine system, we have to remember, we have to know that this process, okay, the mechanism of endocrine system is control the physiological system. Okay, and this term is actually referred to the homeostasis. Okay, homeostasis is the process to maintain the physiological processes. Okay, or you can see here in my lecture notes, homeostatic or self-regulation is a control systems are common features in the control of the endocrine system. I will give you some example after this. For example, when we talk about negative feedback system, positive feedback system, how this homeostasis control the physiological system. Okay, so simple control, the signal hormone can be limited in magnitude, for example, amplitude or duration, for example, frequency, where only enough signal or hormone, which is threshold, can produce a response of the target cells. So meaning that the system or the physiological system, okay, they have the optimum level, or we can say threshold, to make sure that the function in normal condition. We can move to the next slide. You can see here, this is the example when we talk about the threshold or optimum level. So you can see here, this is example of the hormone LH. And you can see here, if too low level of LH, they will be impact in terms of the follicular growth, oocyte maturation, inadequate androgen and estrogen synthesis. However, when too high or the level of LH is more than the optimum level, you can see here the effects, for example, follicular atresia, oocyte development compromise, suppression of granular cell proliferation, premature luteinization, or pre-ovulatory follicles. So meaning that, okay, the optimum level is important. For example, in this system, LH system, to make sure that the follicular development in normal condition level should be above the threshold but below the ceiling, meaning that we have to make sure that the process in normal function, okay, in terms of the LH and the follicular growth. So please refer in terms of the function, this one under female reproductive system under LH hormone. Okay, so this is the meaning of threshold or optimum level, meaning that we cannot more than that or we cannot lower than that. So we have to make sure that the level of hormone, for example, is under control. Okay, level should be above the threshold but below the ceiling. Okay, guys, so we move to the next slide. So now, what is the negative feedback system? So I think this one you already know about the system, especially under biochemistry, physiology too. Okay, what can I summarize the negative feedback system is actually the process to inhibit, okay, the production of certain level, or to decrease the secretion, or to inhibit or modulate the production. Okay, for example, you can see here the next slide. Okay, so this is a blood glucose metabolism. Okay, what happened when the low blood glucose or high blood glucose? Okay, maybe we can see the high blood glucose. So high blood glucose, it will increase the insulin. Okay, acts in terms of the conversion. Okay, from glucose into glycogen. Okay, so meaning that the insulin inhibit or modulate the production of glucose, especially in the blood, okay, by change or by modulate from glucose into glycogen. So this is an example under negative feedback mechanism. Okay, but however, you can see here, positive feedback mechanism is to make sure that the process is continuously, okay, we cannot stop, we cannot inhibit, we cannot decrease the level or decrease the production. We have to make sure that the process is continuously, okay. For example, you can see here in parturition, okay, in parturition process. We maybe you can refer to my lecture notes under parturition, under reproductive system. What happened to the hormone, especially the oxytocin, fetal cortisol, during parturition? The level is increased to make sure that the baby can deliver normally. Okay, during parturition. So we have to know that the hormone, this one, is actually under the positive feedback mechanism. We have to make sure, okay, or the body have to make sure that the process of parturition is successful. Okay. So I think you have another example. Please refer to my lecture notes. Okay. Okay. Example 2. Okay. We move to the next slide. Example 2. Okay, suckling stimulates the nipple receptors, resulting in an increased oxytocin released by the posterior pituitary, with a corresponding increase in the milk ejection reflex. Okay, so meaning that the oxytocin, I mean, we have to make sure that the oxytocin level increase or continuously, okay, by the posterior pituitary, to make sure that the baby can, can use the milk, especially the first milk, first colostrum of the milk. Okay, cessation of suckling removes the stimulus, which terminates the release of oxytocin. So this is example of positive feedback mechanism. Okay, so I think after before this slide, we have the picture. Maybe you can refer to my slide. I think slide number 11. The picture of the calf stimulation of mammary gland in terms of the how the pituitary release the milk ejection. Okay, so now we move to the next control of endocrine system. We call inhibitory control. Okay, inhibitory control, you can see here certain hormones have a very general action on variety of target cell, for example, growth hormone. So under this control, they have a specific certain hormone or specific hormone which is referred to the target cell. For example, growth hormone. Okay, and then these hormones are controlled by an inhibitory hormone which prevent their release. So at the certain time, for example, when we talk about the development of the human or animals, and let's say after 3 months or 4 months, during certain time, they have to inhibit or regulate the suppression of the hormone because of the hormone. Because of the hormone, they need to inhibit just to make sure that the process of the development is in normal condition. It's actually similar with when we talk about the threshold, when we talk about the optimum level. Okay, it cannot more than that. It cannot more than that. Okay, because if more than that, okay, something problem with the development of the human or animal's body. Okay, I think I have the disease. I think at the end of this lecture, we have some example in terms of the disease under endocrine system. Okay, so maybe later we will see okay, the content of the disease of the endocrine system. Okay, so this is inhibitory control, very specific hormone, certain target for in certain target cells, for example, growth hormone. Next control under endocrine system is metabolic control. Okay, metabolic control is actually referred to the enzyme, referred to the enzyme activity, what happened, especially when we talk about the pathway, when we talk about the response activity. Okay, this is actually under metabolic control. So maybe I can read under the definition of the metabolic control. Regulation of metabolic pathway includes regulation of an enzyme in a pathway by increasing or decreasing its response to signals. Control involves monitoring the effects that these changes in an enzyme activity have on the overall rate of the pathway. For example, an enzyme may show large changes in activity being highly regulated. But if these changes have little effect, then this enzyme is not involved in the control of the pathway. So the metabolic is actually refer to the enzyme, whether the enzyme is active or whether the enzyme is low or high. It actually depends on the physiological responses. Okay, so this is metabolic control under the enzyme activity. Okay, actually metabolic control, or when we talk about enzyme, is related more on the nutrition. When we refer, when for example, in FYP final year project, when they discuss or when they study about the effects of certain diet, or certain feeding treatment, feeding regime into the animals, into the metabolic control, the effects of the digestive system. Okay, a lot of enzyme that control the body system. Okay, so this is under metabolic control. Okay, guys. So endocrine rhythm. So this is by rhythm. Most organized body activity shows periodic rhythms or cyclic changes. They have the cyclic or cycle changes. It actually depends on the environmental changes. Okay, some rhythms are coordinated by external signs. For example, the 24-hour light dark cycle. Okay, so you can refer my lecture notes in terms of the example. Okay, or I think I have example after this. Okay, so circadian based on 24-hour cycles, ultradian based on less than 24-hour cycle, infradian based on longer than 24-hour cycle. For example, 28 days menstrual cycle in women, especially in human, estrous cycle in animals, or seasonal reproductive periods in animals. So they have the cycle. So the endocrine control system is actually based on the cycle. Okay, so we move to the next slide. Many hormone functions show a circadian rhythm. For example, 24-hour cycles. Okay, you can see here the example. Cortisol secretion is maximal between 4 and 8 a.m. based on research finding. This is based on research finding in terms of the environmental or the weather during 4 and 8 a.m. in terms of the cortisol secretion. Growth hormone and prolactin secretion reach maximum about 1 hour. This is actually, when we talk about growth hormone and prolactin, is referred to the inhibitory control. Okay, they have the certain time to the target cell. Okay, so I think this is the towards this towards the end of lecture. So maybe you can refer slide number 19 and number 20. Sorry, 18, 19 and 20 is actually endocrine disorder. What happened when the lack of, for example, growth of hormone, excess of growth of hormone. Okay, so this is the disease associated with the endocrine system. Okay, guys. So in this lecture, basically refer to the negative and positive feedback system. I mean, this is the most what we call that familiar or most function that we always discuss. Negative, positive, metabolic disorder, metabolic control. Okay, so later after this on lecture 3, I will touch on the mechanism of the hormone action, especially target cell and the homeostatic and the threshold itself. Okay, so we continue our lecture to lecture 3 after this. And please make sure that you have my lecture notes. Please download it and please read it. Okay, so I have to stop now. So stay well and stay safe. Thank you very much. Bye bye.